They'll tell you they don't need anyone, that they're fine on their own, that they like their space, their freedom, their solitude. And you'll believe them because they sound convincing, detached, self contained, untouchable. But what they won't tell you is that they still watch your every move when you pull away, that they still feel the emptiness when you stop reaching out, that they still ache quietly when they realize you meant what they pretended not to care about. The avoidant doesn't live without need. They live in denial of it. They learned early that needing someone was dangerous, that wanting too much meant disappointment, that love always came with a cost: control, rejection, or loss. So they built a shell around their heart, not because they didn't care, but because caring too openly once broke them. Now they protect themselves through distance. They mistake withdrawal for power, silence for safety, independence for control. But underneath all that space, there's still a pulse, still a hunger, still a quiet, trembling dependency. They can't admit to. They need closeness, but they only know how to reach for it in reverse. They pull away to see if you'll follow. They go silent to test if you'll stay. They detach to confirm you care enough to pull them back. It's not manipulation. It's survival. Because in their world, control equals safety. If they're the one who distances, they can't be the one abandoned. So they build their safety by staying one step away from you, close enough to feel your warmth, but far enough not to burn. They'll say they don't need reassurance, but they crave it deeply. They just need it to look effortless. They'll wait for you to text first, to prove you're still there. They'll act indifferent when you compliment them, but secretly replay it later, when no one's watching. They'll test your consistency in 1,000 subtle ways, not because they don't care, but because they do. They just don't know how to let you see that without feeling exposed. When the avoidance says, "I don't need anyone," what they often mean is, "I can't trust anyone with my need." Because to them, need has always been punished. They've learned that the moment they depend, someone leaves, that the moment they open up, someone turns away. So they convince themselves they're better off alone, even while craving the very connection they deny. It's a form of emotional self-preservation that looks like strength from the outside, but inside, it's exhaustion, because it takes an incredible amount of energy to pretend you don't need what your body was wired to crave. They'll keep busy to escape the ache, work longer, scroll deeper, overthink quieter. They'll fill their time, so they don't have to feel the space. But when the night gets still, when there's no one left to distract them, that's when it surfaces. The dependency they can't outrun, the one that whispers, "You still need someone. You always did." They miss people long before they admit it. They grieve silently. They love quietly. You won't see it in words. You'll see it in the long pauses, in the messages left unsent, in the way they hover near connection, but never fully step into it. Their love isn't loud. It's restrained, carefully measured, guarded, but it's love nonetheless, just buried under years of conditioning that said, "Don't show it. You'll get hurt." Here's the truth. Avoidants need connection just as deeply as anyone else. They just don't know how to need safely, because every time they reached for love in the past, it came with unpredictability, with conditions, with the kind of love that took more than it gave. So they learned to shrink their needs until they became almost invisible. And then they called it independence. But independence built on fear isn't freedom. It's loneliness disguised as strength. What they really want isn't to be untouched. It's to be understood without being consumed. They want someone who sees the distance and doesn't take it personally, who recognizes the fear behind the silence, who stays steady without chasing, without punishing, without leaving. Because even the most avoidant heart is still looking for safety. It's just been looking for it in control, in space, in solitude. But real safety doesn't live in distance. It lives in trust. They'll resist that at first, because trust means surrender, and surrender means losing control, something their nervous system equates with danger. So when someone safe comes along, they'll feel both drawn and terrified. They'll test it, doubt it, push it away, because love that doesn't hurt feels unfamiliar. They've spent so long managing their aloneness. That true connection feels like chaos. But that chaos isn't danger. It's healing, because their body is finally feeling what it was wired to crave all along. The avoidance dependency isn't weakness. It's human. It's the part of them that still hopes, still reaches, still believes in closeness, even when they act like they don't. And the ones who truly see them, not chase them, not fix them, but see them, become the mirrors that remind them. Dependency isn't danger. It's the doorway back to love. They say they don't need you, but they notice when you pull back. They don't ask you to stay, but they tense when you leave. They pretend they don't care, but they monitor the distance. That's the avoidance quiet dependency. It lives between the lines. It hides in the pauses, the detachment, the cool tone. They won't reach out, but they'll keep the thread alive, just enough to know you're still there. Dependency, for them, isn't expressed. It's managed. They regulate closeness, like they're controlling a flame. Too close, and they burn. Too far, and they freeze. So they hover in the middle, a constant balancing act between wanting and resisting. You'll feel it in the mixed signals, in the texts that come after silence, in the moments they open up, then disappear. They're not trying to confuse you. They're trying to survive you. Because connection, for them, feels both nourishing and dangerous. Their dependency doesn't show up in how they cling. It shows up in how they control. They control who gets close, when, and how much. It's not that they don't want love. They want it to feel predictable. They want to know where the exits are. So they build invisible rules. How often they text, how long they stay, how much they reveal. These rules make them feel safe, but they also keep them lonely. Because love can't flow, where control walls it off. They keep one hand on the door at all times. Even in connection, they're half prepared to leave. They might imagine scenarios where things end, not because they want them to, but because preemptive endings hurt less than surprise ones. It's not pessimism, it's emotional armor. They don't trust permanence, they trust preparation. That's how dependency hides behind self protection. When they care deeply, they often pull back the most because caring equals exposure. Exposure equals risk. So they do something paradoxical. They detach to feel safe in their caring. They'll think about you constantly, but they won't tell you. They'll check your profile, but won't message. They'll miss you, but only in silence. That's how they love. From a distance they can control. Even when they leave, they rarely disconnect fully. They keep emotional strings attached. In memories, in quiet monitoring, in energy. They may not reach out, but they keep you alive in their world. Mentally, emotionally, digitally. That's their version of staying close. Without being vulnerable. It's an emotional halfway house. Not intimacy, but not absence either. Because total detachment feels as terrifying as closeness. So they maintain an illusion of control. I'm not with you, but I haven't lost you either. They depend on knowing you're still there. That's their secret dependency. They won't ask for reassurance. They'll test it. They won't say they need comfort. They'll provoke it. They won't admit they're lonely. They'll withdraw until you chase. Each of these actions, is a coded expression of need. It's dependency wearing the mask of distance. They'll seek connection in the safest ways they know, through intellect, through shared activities, through subtle humor. They keep emotions indirect. That's their safety valve, because emotions feel like traps. But connection disguised as conversation, that feels manageable. So they'll reach out casually. They'll share a meme. They'll mention something small. It looks harmless, but it's their way of saying, "Are you still here?" They may replay old interactions to regulate themselves, reread messages, scroll through photos, revisit moments where they felt loved, not to reminisce, but to feel safe again. That's emotional dependency too, just one they can control privately, because real-time connection requires vulnerability, and vulnerability means they could lose control of the image they've built. So they depend on memory instead of presence, reflection instead of risk. Their nervous system seeks you, even when their words push you away. They crave your regulation, your calm tone, your steady rhythm, your emotional grounding. They won't ask for it directly. They'll just feel better when you're near. And they'll panic when you withdraw completely. That panic reveals everything, the dependency they've been hiding. They need connection to feel safe in the world, just like everyone else. The difference is, they've been taught that needing others makes them weak. So they fight their biology to protect their ego. But underneath it all, their heart still aches the same. They still long for the touch that soothes, the voice that grounds, the presence that says, "You don't have to do it alone." They want that. They just want to be sure it won't cost them themselves. So they try to do both, to need and not need, to stay and not stay, to love and not lose. But love doesn't work that way. Love asks for surrender, and surrender is the one thing they've never felt safe enough to give. That's why their dependency stays hidden, not because it isn't there, but because it feels too dangerous to show. Still, it leaks out through the longing in their restraint, through the ache in their avoidance, through the quiet hope that you'll stay, even when they push you away. That's the paradox of the avoidant. They need connection the most, when they seem to want it the least. And the truth is, they don't want to be alone. They just want to feel safe, depending on someone again. They finally meet someone safe, someone calm, someone who doesn't chase or withdraw, someone who stays steady, the way love is meant to be. And at first, it feels beautiful, almost unreal, like they finally found what they were missing. But then something strange happens. Their body starts to panic. Their mind begins to question. The calm feels threatening. The consistency feels too close. Because to them, safety doesn't feel safe. It feels exposed. When you grow up in unpredictability, your nervous system learns to anchor itself. In chaos, it learns that love equals vigilance, that affection equals tension, that peace means you've let your guard down. And that's when the hurt comes. So when the avoidant finally meets real safety, their body interprets it as danger. Their whole system says, "This is too quiet, too easy. Something must be wrong." And so they pull back. You'll see it in subtle ways first. The hesitation in their texts, the slower replies, the sudden emotional coolness. After a night of connection, it's not rejection, it's regulation. Their body is overwhelmed by the very thing it's always longed for. The closeness that should calm them triggers their alarm because their body doesn't yet know how to feel safe in safety. Inside, they're torn. One part of them wants to lean in. The other part screams to run. It's a constant civil war. Love versus protection. Yearning versus fear. Connection versus control. They tell themselves, "This is too much." But what they really mean is, "This is too new." Their nervous system doesn't trust new. It trusts familiar. And familiar has always been distance. So when someone stays, when someone doesn't chase, doesn't guilt, doesn't demand, the avoidance mind starts spinning. Why aren't they reacting? Why aren't they trying harder? Do they even care? Because love, to them, was always mixed with chaos. Without it, they don't know how to measure love. So they start to provoke small waves, just to feel something recognizable, a hint of distance, a small misunderstanding, a moment of tension, not because they want conflict, but because conflict feels like home. Their dependency shows here, too, just inverted. They don't cling for reassurance. They create a reason to feel it again. The push becomes their way of staying emotionally tethered. As long as there's some reaction, some pull, some chase, they still feel connected. That's their version of closeness. Chaotic, but alive. They might tell themselves they're bored, that the spark is gone, that the relationship feels too calm. But beneath that boredom is a dysregulated nervous system that doesn't yet recognize peace as passion. They miss the highs and lows because that's what intimacy used to feel like: intense, consuming, unstable. Safety feels dull until they learn it's not dullness, it's stability. And stability, to someone who's lived in survival, feels like silence after a storm. It takes time to trust it. In this stage, they often test the one who stays. They might withdraw emotionally to see if you'll follow. They might act indifferent to see if you'll give up. They might create distance to confirm you care. Each test is an unconscious question. Will you love me even when I push you away? Because for them, love has always been proven through endurance, not presence, but persistence. And when you don't chase, that's when they feel their hidden dependency rise to the surface. They thought they wanted distance, but now it hurts. It feels hollow, too quiet, too final. They start to realize the space they created doesn't feel like freedom anymore. It feels like loss. That's the moment the truth starts to crack through. They do need connection. They always did. But admitting that feels like standing in fire. Because to need is to risk. To depend is to surrender. To love is to lose control. And control has been their only safety. So they hover at the edge, wanting to reach out, but terrified to. They type the message, then delete it. They plan the call, then talk themselves out of it. Their body vibrates with conflict. Stay safe or stay alone. This is where many avoidants get stuck. In the space between awareness and action. They know they care. They know they miss you. They even know they're the one creating the distance. But they can't yet cross that gap because closeness requires surrender, and surrender still feels like danger. So they wait. Hope you'll bridge the space. Hope you'll read between the silences. That's their dependency showing again, not through neediness, but through longing disguised as calm. Inside, they're far from calm. Their body is aching for reassurance. Their heart is reaching for connection. Their mind is fighting to stay detached. They replay every memory of safety and try to convince themselves they don't miss it. But love doesn't leave quietly. It lingers. It hums. It waits. And deep down, they feel it. The dependency they swore they didn't have. Eventually, the stillness gets too loud, and they realize they don't want independence if it means isolation, because solitude only feels powerful when it's a choice, not a cage. They begin to see that control has protected them, but also imprisoned them, that all their distance has only ever been an attempt to feel safe enough to come close. That's the heartbreak of the avoidant. Their body pushes away what their soul aches to keep. Their silence is their scream. Their distance is their reach. Their withdrawal is their way of staying safe, while hoping you'll still be there when they're ready to return. That's the dependency they never admit, the one that lives beneath all the pretending. They always thought detachment was strength, that needing less meant hurting less, that love was safer when it stayed just out of reach. But then comes the stillness, the quiet after pushing someone away, the silence that isn't peaceful anymore. It's heavy, lonely, unsettling. This is where their mind starts to turn against their defenses, because it's no longer someone else's chaos they're escaping. It's their own. They start replaying moments, the soft ones, the ones they pretended didn't mean much, the way you looked at them, the way they felt grounded in your presence, the way they didn't have to perform. And for the first time, instead of brushing it off, they feel it. It hits like a quiet wave. Not loud, not dramatic, just undeniable. That what they ran from wasn't suffocation. It was safety, and they didn't know how to stay. This realization doesn't come easily. It fights through layers of denial, through stories they've told themselves for years. I'm just not the relationship type. I don't need anyone. I'm better alone. Those phrases have been armor, a way to sound certain, while covering a wound that's never stopped bleeding. But now, those words feel hollow. Even they don't believe them anymore. Because if being alone was freedom, why does it feel like punishment? They start noticing patterns they once ignored. The way every relationship has ended the same cycle of intensity, distance, confusion, and regret. Different faces, same ache. It's not the partners that keep changing. It's the pattern repeating itself. And the pattern always begins where fear meets love. The moment they start to feel too much, their system shuts down. Not because they don't care, but because caring feels like losing control. They were raised to believe that needing someone meant weakness, that emotions made you vulnerable, that independence was the only way to stay safe. But now, they're beginning to understand something new. Detachment isn't protection, it's pain avoidance. And pain avoidance has cost them real connection. They're starting to see that love isn't the enemy. It's the unfamiliar feeling they've been too afraid to trust. Awareness is brutal because it doesn't change the pattern right away. It just makes you conscious of it. They'll still want to pull away, still feel the urge to go silent, still crave distance when they start to feel close. But now, they see it happening. They notice the walls rising. They feel the panic in their chest. When someone reaches in too far, and that awareness, that split second before they run, is where transformation begins. It's messy at first, because awareness doesn't erase the reflex. It just slows it down. They still text less, still say, I'm fine when they're not, still disappear into thought when emotions rise too high. But they start to wonder, what if I stayed this time? That question becomes their new edge, their quiet rebellion against their past. Because every time they stay, when they want to withdraw, they teach their nervous system that safety can be survived. This is the invisible work of healing, not grand gestures, but small moments of courage, answering the call they'd usually ignore, letting someone's hand linger, without pulling away, saying, I miss you, even when their voice shakes. Each act of softness rewires what their body believes about love. And for the first time, love stops feeling like a threat. It starts to feel like relief. But it's not a straight line. They still relapse into distance, still confuse comfort with boredom, still convince themselves they're better off alone. Whenever emotions get too loud, healing for the avoidant isn't about perfection. It's about noticing when they disappear and gently bringing themselves back. Each return is progress. Each small moment of presence is a victory over their old reflex to run. They begin to see that dependency isn't the same as desperation, that needing someone doesn't make them weak, it makes them human. They start to realize that the people they pushed away weren't trying to control them, they were trying to love them, and that maybe love isn't something to earn or fear, it's something to receive. But receiving requires trust, and trust requires presence. And presence is the one thing they've always fled from. So the work becomes this: staying through the urge to escape, letting love settle in, without trying to dissect it, learning that silence doesn't always mean danger. They start practicing stillness, letting safety feel normal, and slowly, their body begins to believe it. This is where love begins to shift from performance to peace, from control to connection, from pretending not to need to admitting, I do. That small admission is everything. Because once they stop fighting their need, they stop fighting love. At first, the change is subtle, almost invisible to the outside world. They still look the same, still sound calm, still say, I'm good when they're not. But something inside is different. A quiet decision has been made. They're tired of leaving before they're left. Tired of pretending distance equals safety. Tired of confusing numbness with peace. They don't want to live in half connections anymore. They want to feel the whole thing, even if it terrifies them. So they start small. They answer messages sooner. They lean into conversations they'd normally avoid. They listen without rehearsing their exit. They even let someone see their hesitation, that small tremor in their chest, when things start to feel real. And instead of hiding it, they say it out loud. I get scared when people get close. That sentence changes everything, because vulnerability, for the avoidant, is the first real sign of strength. They've spent years thinking love was a trap. Now, they begin to see it's an invitation, not to lose themselves, but to find the parts they buried. In the name of survival, all the versions of themselves that learn to shut down, to stay composed, to not need. They start to thaw, and underneath the armor is a softness that never died. It just waited for safety long enough to emerge. They start to realize something profound. The very thing they were afraid to need is the thing that heals them. Connection, not the surface kind, but the slow, grounded kind that doesn't demand or chase. It just stays. And for the first time, they let it stay. They let love be quiet, steady, and uneventful. They stop waiting for the chaos. They stop searching for the spark that burns instead of warms. They let love feel peaceful. That's the true rewiring. When safety no longer feels like boredom, when calm no longer feels like absence, when closeness stops triggering fear and starts triggering comfort. It's not instant. It's earned in moments. 1,000 tiny choices to stay instead of flee. They learn that love isn't about control. It's about allowing, about letting someone see you, not your mask, not your composure, you. And this time, they don't run. They stay through the discomfort. They breathe through the panic. They don't confuse the urge to withdraw with the need to protect. They begin to feel their feelings instead of analyzing them. The heart that once hid behind silence starts to speak. The body that once froze starts to soften. The soul that once built walls starts opening its doors. Slowly, unevenly, but undeniably. Love doesn't rush them. It meets them where they are. And in that space, they begin to understand something they never could before. Dependence doesn't mean weakness. It means connection. It means trust. It means two nervous systems learning that they don't have to do it all alone anymore. They begin to see the truth. They never pushed people away because they didn't care. They pushed them away because caring felt like drowning, because safety was foreign, because peace was something they'd never practiced. But now, they are practicing, and it's changing everything. The avoidant who once vanished in love now stays, not perfectly, but presently. They check in when they go quiet. They apologize without being asked. They reach out first. These small moments don't look like much from the outside, but inside, they are seismic shifts. Each time they stay, they rewrite their story. And maybe the most healing part is when they finally say, I do need you, not from desperation, but from truth, because now they understand that needing someone isn't the same as losing themselves. It's what makes them human. They stop pretending to be invincible. They stop performing independence as proof of worth. And in doing so, they finally taste the freedom they were chasing all along, the freedom to love without running from it. This is the quiet transformation of the avoidant heart. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady, present, alive. They're still learning, still softening, still catching the reflex to hide. But every time they stay, every time they let love in, they build a new home inside themselves. A home that doesn't run, doesn't freeze, doesn't pretend. A home that can finally say, I'm safe here. I can need, and I can love fully.